It was a crisp morning in early 2025 when the news broke, sending shockwaves through the media landscape and beyond. The View, the long-standing daytime talk show that had been a staple of American television for nearly 3 decades, was shutting down. The reason? A staggering barrage of over 30 defamation lawsuits that had piled up against the show, its hosts, and its parent network, ABC. For years, the program had thrived on its bold, unfiltered discussions, tackling everything from politics to pop culture with a mix of sharp wit, fiery debates, and unapologetic opinions. But now, it seemed, that very formula, the one that had made it a cultural juggernaut, had become its undoing. If you want to stay up to date on all this news, remember to subscribe to the channel. It's free. The story of The View's downfall began slowly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. The show had always walked a tightrope, balancing provocative commentary with the inherent risks of live television. Its hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, were known for their outspokenness, often diving headfirst into controversial topics with little regard for the consequences. Over the years, they'd weathered their fair share of criticism, from accusations of bias to occasional on-air missteps that sparked outrage among viewers. But nothing had ever threatened the show's existence quite like this. The first lawsuit came in late 2023, filed by a prominent conservative figure who claimed that remarks made on The View about his personal life and political affiliations were not only false, but deliberately malicious. The hosts had spent an entire segment dissecting his actions, with Joy Behar leading the charge, her biting sarcasm cutting through the airwaves. "This guy's a walking disaster," she'd said, followed by a laundry list of allegations that, as it turned out, lacked concrete evidence. The plaintiff argued that the statements damaged his reputation irreparably, and he demanded millions in compensation. At the time, the incident was brushed off as just another blip on the radar. After all, The View had faced legal threats before and emerged unscathed. But that initial case was only the beginning. By mid-2024, a second lawsuit emerged, this time from a celebrity who'd been the subject of a heated debate on the show. Sunny Hostin had questioned the star's integrity, citing sources that later proved to be unreliable tabloid fodder. The celebrity, a well-liked public figure with a massive following, didn't take kindly to the insinuations. Her legal team pounced, filing a defamation claim that accused The View of reckless disregard for the truth. The case gained traction quickly, fueled by social media outrage and a growing chorus of voices calling out the show's tendency to blur the line between opinion and fact. As the months rolled on, the lawsuits began to multiply like wildfire. Politicians, business moguls, entertainers, people from all walks of life who'd found themselves in the crosshairs of The View's commentary started coming forward. Some claims were flimsy, little more than opportunistic grabs for attention or money, but others were substantial, backed by detailed evidence that painted the show's discussions as careless at best and malicious at worst. A tech billionaire alleged that Whoopi Goldberg had falsely accused him of unethical practices during a segment on corporate greed, costing him significant business deals. A former government official claimed that Sarah Haynes had misrepresented his record, twisting facts to fit a narrative that left his career in tatters. Each new filing added weight to the growing narrative. The View had gone too far, too often. Behind the scenes, ABC executives scrambled to contain the damage. Legal teams were assembled, meetings stretched late into the night, and the network's PR machine kicked into overdrive. For a while, it seemed like they might weather the storm. Settlements were reached in a handful of cases, quiet payouts accompanied by carefully worded statements of regret. The hosts, for their part, remained defiant on air. "We're not here to sugarcoat things," Whoopi declared during one episode, her voice steady as she addressed the controversy head-on. "We call it like we see it, and if that ruffles some feathers, so be it." The audience cheered, but the applause couldn't drown out the sound of legal papers piling up. By the fall of 2024, the situation had spiraled out of control. The sheer volume of lawsuits, over 30 by some counts, had turned The View into a lightning rod for criticism. Advertisers, wary of the mounting backlash, began pulling their sponsorships. Viewership, while still respectable, started to dip as casual fans tuned out, tired of the constant drama. The show's detractors, emboldened by the legal onslaught, took to social media platforms like X to celebrate what they saw as long overdue accountability. Finally, The View is getting what it deserves, one user posted, a sentiment echoed by thousands of others. Meanwhile, loyal fans rallied to the show's defense, arguing that the lawsuits were a coordinated attack by powerful figures looking to silence dissenting voices. The tipping point came in early 2025 when a blockbuster case hit the headlines. A former president, already a frequent target of the show's ire, filed a defamation suit claiming that The View had spread falsehoods about his business dealings and personal conduct. The filing was explosive, alleging a pattern of knowing and intentional lies spanning years of episodes. The plaintiff's legal team presented transcripts, video clips, and even internal emails from ABC that suggested the network had been aware of the risks, but pressed forward anyway. The damages sought were astronomical, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the case promised to drag The View through a lengthy, high-profile trial. Faced with this existential threat, ABC made a stunning decision. The View would end its run. The announcement came on a Monday morning in March 2025, delivered via a press release that cited ongoing legal challenges and a desire to reassess the network's daytime programming strategy. The news hit like a bombshell. For nearly 28 years, the show had been a fixture, surviving cast changes, cultural shifts, and countless controversies. Created by Barbara Walters in 1997, it had redefined the talk show format, giving women a platform to speak their minds in a way that was raw, real, and often revolutionary. Now it was over. The final episode aired a week later, a bittersweet farewell that drew millions of viewers. The set was the same as always, bright, colorful, and buzzing with energy, but the mood was somber. The hosts sat at their familiar table, reflecting on the show's legacy and addressing the elephant in the room. "We've had an incredible run," Joy Behar said, her voice cracking slightly. "But sometimes the cost of speaking out is higher than anyone expects." Sunny Hostin spoke of the chilling effect the lawsuits might have on free expression, while Alyssa Farah Griffin urged viewers to keep questioning the powerful. Whoopi, ever the anchor, closed the show with a simple message: "We're not going quietly into the night. This isn't the end, it's just a pause." In the days that followed, the media dissected the shutdown from every angle. Some hailed it as a victory for accountability, arguing that The View had crossed ethical lines too many times. Others mourned it as a loss for bold, unfiltered discourse, In an increasingly cautious media landscape, legal analysts predicted that the remaining lawsuits would drag on for years, with ABC likely settling most out of court to avoid further damage. The financial toll was already staggering. Tens of millions in legal fees and settlements, with more to come. For the hosts, the end of The View marked a turning point. Whoopi Goldberg retreated from the spotlight, hinting at a return to acting or writing. Joy Behar, ever the firebrand, vowed to find a new platform for her voice, perhaps a podcast or a book. Sunny Hostin doubled down on her legal career, framing the shutdown as a rallying cry for reform in defamation law. Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah-Griffin, newer additions to the panel, explored opportunities elsewhere in television, their futures uncertain but full of potential. The cultural ripple effects were profound. The View had been more than a show. It was a battleground for ideas, a mirror reflecting America's divisions and dreams. Its absence left a void in daytime TV, one that competitors rushed to fill with safer, less confrontational fare. But none could replicate the magic of those 5 women at that table, clashing and laughing and challenging each other in real time. The lawsuits had won, but at what cost? The question lingered unanswered as the credits rolled on an era that had shaped a generation. Years later, people would still talk about The View and its dramatic demise. Some would remember it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked rhetoric. Others would see it as a martyr for free speech, brought down by a system that punishes boldness. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between, a messy, complicated mix of hubris, principle, and the relentless grind of the legal machine. And so, the story of The View ended not with a bang, but with a quiet fade to black, leaving behind a legacy as polarizing as the show itself had ever been. Years later, people would still talk about The View and its dramatic demise. Some would remember it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked rhetoric. Others would see it as a martyr for free speech, brought down by a system that punishes boldness. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between, a messy, complicated mix of hubris, principle, and the relentless grind of the legal machine. And so, the story of The View ended not with a bang, but with a quiet fade to black, leaving behind a legacy as polarizing as the show itself had ever been. In the immediate aftermath, the media landscape shifted perceptibly. Daytime television, once a vibrant arena for debate and personality-driven programming, seemed to retreat into itself. Networks, spooked by the precedent set by The View's legal woes, doubled down on safer content, cooking segments, celebrity fluff pieces, and game shows that avoided anything resembling controversy. The void left by the show's absence was palpable, a silent reminder of what had been lost. Fans took to X and other platforms to lament the change, sharing clips of iconic moments. Whoopi's impassioned monologues, Joy's acerbic one-liners, Sunny's legal breakdowns. Nostalgia became a currency, traded freely among those who missed the chaos. Meanwhile, the lawsuits that had toppled The View continued their slow march through the courts. ABC, determined to put the ordeal behind them, settled case after case, each agreement sealed with a non-disclosure clause and a hefty check. The former president's blockbuster suit, however, refused to fade quietly. His legal team pushed for a trial, sensing an opportunity to make a public spectacle of the network's downfall. Pundits speculated that the case could set a new standard for defamation law, tightening the reins on what media outlets could say without fear of reprisal. Free speech advocates watched with bated breath, warning of a chilling effect that could ripple far beyond daytime TV. For the hosts, life post-The View was a mixed bag of reinvention and reflection. Whoopi Goldberg, true to her word, stepped away from the public eye for a time, resurfacing months later with a memoir that promised an unvarnished look at her decades in the spotlight. Titled simply Whoopi, the book flew off shelves, its candid recounting of The View's final days reigniting debates about the show's legacy. Joy Behar, never one to stay silent, launched a podcast called Joy Unleashed, where she continued her signature blend of humor and outrage. It quickly found an audience among her loyal fans, proving that her voice still carried weight. Sunny Hostin, meanwhile, leaned into her legal roots. She became a vocal advocate for reforming defamation laws, arguing that the current system disproportionately favored the powerful. Her op-eds appeared in major newspapers, and she made the rounds on cable news, framing The View's shutdown as a symptom of a broader crisis in journalism. Sarah Haynes landed a gig co-hosting a morning show on a rival network, her sunny demeanor a perfect fit for the lighter fare. Alyssa Farah Griffin, with her political background, pivoted to a role as a commentator, offering insights on the shifting tides of American discourse. Back at ABC, the network struggled to fill the 11 a.m. slot that The View had once dominated. A string of replacements, a travel show, a health-focused panel, a celebrity interview series, flopped one after another, failing to capture the magic of the original. Executives privately admitted that they'd underestimated the show's unique appeal, its ability to blend entertainment with provocation. Rumors swirled about a potential revival, perhaps with a new cast or a retooled format, but the legal scars ran too deep. The View had become a cautionary tale within the industry, a warning whispered in boardrooms and writers' rooms alike. The cultural fallout extended beyond television. The View had been a lightning rod for America's culture wars, a place where red and blue states collided daily. Its absence left a gap in the national conversation, one that social media tried, and often failed, to fill. On X, hashtags like #BringBackTheView trended sporadically, driven by fans who longed for the show's unscripted energy. But the platform's echo chambers couldn't replicate the communal experience of watching five women hash it out live, their disagreements a microcosm of a divided nation. The plaintiffs in the lawsuits, for their part, moved on with varying degrees of satisfaction. The tech billionaire used his settlement to fund a new venture, his reputation largely restored. The celebrity who'd sued over Sunny's comments parlayed the victory into a comeback tour, her star power undimmed. The former president, ever the showman, kept his case in the headlines, using it as a rallying cry for his base. For them, The View's demise was a trophy, proof that even the loudest voices could be silenced with enough money and persistence. As 2026 dawned, a documentary about The View hit streaming platforms, reigniting interest in the saga. Titled The Fall of the Table, it featured interviews with former producers, legal experts, and even a few of the hosts. The film didn't shy away from the show's flaws, its occasional lapses in fact-checking, its penchant for hyperbole, but it also celebrated its triumphs. Clips of Barbara Walters' early vision for the show underscored how far it had come and how much it had shaped the zeitgeist. Critics praised the documentary as a balanced post-mortem, though some accused it of glossing over the real damage done by the lawsuits. The hosts watched from afar, their reactions a mix of pride and melancholy. It's hard to see it all laid out like that. Joy admitted on her podcast, her voice softer than usual, but I wouldn't trade a minute of it. Sunny, in a rare TV appearance, called the documentary a love letter to what we built, even as she criticized its legal analysis. Whoopi, ever enigmatic, declined to comment publicly, letting her memoir speak for itself. The film's release sparked a fresh wave of debate, with viewers divided over whether The View had been a victim or a villain. By 2027, the show's legacy had solidified into something complex and enduring. Scholars began citing it in studies of media and gender, noting how it had empowered women to speak boldly in a male-dominated industry. Its influence lingered in the DNA of newer talk shows, though none dared to push the boundaries quite as far. The lawsuits, once a death knell, faded into the background, their details lost to time as the plaintiffs cashed their checks and moved on. What remained was the memory of a show that had dared to be loud, messy, and unapologetic. For the fans, The View lived on in reruns and YouTube clips, a time capsule of an era when television could still shock and unite. They gathered online to swap stories of their favorite episodes. The time Joy walked off set, the time Whoopi shut down a guest with a single glare. The show's demise had left a wound, but it had also cemented its place in history. It was a paradox, a program felled by its own fearlessness, yet immortalized by it. In quiet moments, the hosts sometimes wondered what might have been. Could they have toned it down, avoided the legal quagmire? Or was the crash inevitable, the price of staying true to themselves? There were no easy answers, only the echo of their voices, sharp, funny, fierce, ringing through the years. The View had been a comet, blazing bright and burning out fast, and its light still lingered in the sky. Decades later, a new generation stumbled across the story, piecing it together from archives and anecdotes. To them, The View was a relic of a wilder time, a window into a world where people argued face-to-face instead of behind screens. They marveled at its audacity, its flaws, its humanity, and in that rediscovery, the show found a second life. Not on air, but in the collective memory, a testament to the power of speaking out, no matter the cost. So it was that The View, even in death, refused to be forgotten. Its table might have gone dark, its chairs empty, but its spirit endured, a stubborn, scrappy, unforgettable force that had shaped a culture, sparked a reckoning, and left an indelible mark on the world it once ruled. As the years stretched into the 2030s, the story of The View took on an almost mythic quality. It became a touchstone for discussions about the evolution of media, a case study taught in journalism schools alongside the rise of cable news and the internet age. Professors pointed to its demise as a pivotal moment, the point where the balance between free expression and legal accountability tipped irrevocably. Students debated the ethics of the host's approach. Were they trailblazers or provocateurs? Their arguments echoing the same divides that had defined the show's run. The lawsuits, once a scandal, were now footnotes in a larger narrative about power and responsibility. The physical remnants of The View found new homes. The iconic table, with its scuffs and scratches from years of heated debates, was donated to the Smithsonian, where it sat in an exhibit on 21st century television. Visitors peered at it through glass, reading plaques that detailed the show's highs and lows. The studio itself, once a hive of activity in New York City, was repurposed into a soundstage for a sitcom, a quieter, less contentious tenant. Yet even there, crew members swore they could feel the ghosts of past arguments lingering in the air, a faint hum of energy that refused to dissipate. For the original fans, now graying and scattered, The View remained a personal milestone. They'd grown up with it, laughed with it, raged at it. At reunions and family gatherings, they'd recount their favorite moments. Whoopi's deadpan takedowns, Joy's fearless jabs, passing the stories down like heirlooms. Some kept DVDs of old episodes, grainy relics of a pre-streaming era, while others scoured the web for bootleg uploads. The show had been a companion through marriages, divorces, elections, and crises, and its absence left a hole that no replacement could fill. The hosts, too, carried The View with them into their later years. Whoopi Goldberg, now a revered elder statesman of entertainment, occasionally referenced it in interviews, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she recalled the chaos. Joy Behar's podcast evolved into a multimedia platform, her audience still hungry for her unfiltered takes. Sunny Hostin wrote a book on media law, dedicating a chapter to the show's legal battles, while Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin settled into quieter lives, their time on the panel a brief but formative chapter. Together, they formed a sisterhood forged in fire, their bond unspoken but unbreakable. By the 2040s, technology had transformed how people consumed media, with virtual reality and AI-driven content dominating the landscape. Yet The View retained a strange allure, its analog rawness a contrast to the polished perfection of the digital age. A startup launched a VR experience called The View, Relive the Debate, letting users sit at the table alongside holographic versions of the hosts. It was a hit, especially among younger audiences who'd never seen the original broadcasts. They marveled at the unscripted clashes, the lack of filters, things that felt alien in their curated world. The lawsuits by then had faded into obscurity, their plaintiffs long retired or forgotten. ABC had recovered financially. Its daytime lineup stabilized with a mix of lifestyle shows and reruns. But the network never quite shook the shadow of The View's collapse. Executives avoided risky programming, a legacy of caution that frustrated creatives who longed to push boundaries. Some whispered that the suits had learned the wrong lesson, that instead of silencing bold voices, they should have fought harder to protect them. A new wave of feminists reclaimed The View as a symbol of resistance. In a world where women's voices were still too often muted, the show's unapologetic femininity, its messiness, its strength resonated anew. Activists pointed to its diverse panel as a model for representation, even as they critiqued its missteps. A biopic about Barbara Walters, focusing on her creation of the show, hit theaters in 2045, starring a rising actress who captured her steely determination. The film ended with The View's final episode, a tearful nod to its complicated legacy. The cultural pendulum swung back toward confrontation in the 2050s, and with it came a renewed appetite for The View-style discourse. A group of young producers pitched a reboot, envisioning a modern take with a fresh cast and tighter oversight. ABC, wary but intrigued, greenlit a pilot. The new show, dubbed The View Next Generation, debuted to mixed reviews. It lacked the original's raw edge. Legal consultants hovered over every script, but it still drew a crowd eager for a taste of the past. The hosts watched from afar, some amused, some skeptical, but all quietly proud. Nature, too, played a role in preserving The View's memory. In 2053, a time capsule buried by fans in Central Park was unearthed during a renovation. Inside were letters, photos, and a USB drive loaded with episodes, a gift from 2025 to the future. The discovery made headlines, sparking a mini revival as networks aired specials revisiting the show's impact. Historians noted how it captured a specific moment. America at a crossroads, wrestling with truth and division in real time. The world kept turning, and The View settled into its place as a legend. By the 2060s, it was less a show than a symbol, invoked whenever someone needed to explain what television once meant. Its flaws were acknowledged, its occasional recklessness, its blind spots, but so was its courage. It had dared to be loud when silence was easier, to fight when retreat was safer. That, perhaps, was its truest legacy, a reminder that speaking up, even imperfectly, could echo across decades. Children born long after the final episode grew up hearing about The View from grandparents, a tale from a bygone era. They'd ask wide-eyed questions. Did they really say that? Did people really care? And the answers would come with a smile. Yes, they did. Yes, they cared. The show's spirit lived in those retellings, a thread connecting past to present, defiance to hope. In quiet corners of the internet, a few diehard fans kept the flame alive. They ran forums, traded trivia, and dreamed of a day when The View might return in full. Their numbers dwindled with time, but their passion didn't. To them, it wasn't just a show, it was a movement, a piece of their identity that no lawsuit could erase. They called themselves The Viewers, a nod to the community that had once rallied around that table. By the 2070s, the legal battles that ended The View were a distant memory, their lessons absorbed into a broader push for media reform. Defamation laws had evolved, striking a delicate balance between accountability and freedom. Some credited The View's sacrifice for the change, arguing that its fall had forced a reckoning. Others saw it as a tragedy, a cautionary tale about the cost of challenging the powerful. Both were right, in their way. And so, a century after its debut, The View stood as a monument to a lost age. Its name conjured images of 5 women, unafraid and unrelenting, their voices cutting through the noise of a fractured world. The lawsuits had silenced them, but only for a moment. In the end, they'd won something greater than a courtroom victory, a place in the story of humanity, a chapter that refused to close. The table might be gone, but the conversation it started, messy, vital, alive, rolled on, as enduring as the show itself had ever hoped to be.